Welcome back to the Kyle Olson Show. Despite what the final result of the November election may allegedly say, President Trump made huge gains with groups of voters versus how he did in 2016. According to the Republican National Committee, President Trump got 12% of the black vote this year compared to 8% in 2016. 19% of black men voted for Trump versus 13% in 2016. Here to explain what contributed to those gains is Paris Dennard, Senior Communications Advisor for Black Media Affairs at the RNC. So, Paris, to what do you credit those gains?
First of all, thanks for having me on the show. It's always a pleasure. I just want your listeners to know that, number one, President Trump and the Republican Party, under the leadership of Ronna McDaniel at the RNC, expanded and diversified the GOP for the better. There's no doubt when you look at what was able to transpire with this election, this president has changed the face of the GOP and the electoral map. We were competing in places and communities and getting votes from people and electing candidates that were extremely diverse, and that's a good thing. And I think the thing that contributes actually directly to these significant gains, especially with the black community, is the president's policies. And they're conservative policies, and they worked. When you looked at his commitment to criminal justice reform through the First Step Act, when you look at the president's commitment for things like school choice, giving parents educational options in their children's education no matter what zip code they live in, we look at his unprecedented support and empowerment for historically black colleges and universities known as HBCUs. You see the president go out of his way to be supportive of small businesses through deregulations and the tax cuts. This president's agenda of putting America first meant actually putting black Americans and making them a priority as well. Because when you looked at the trade deals, as specifically USMCA and others, that was allowing and will allow black small business owners to compete globally. And these jobs that were lost through bad trade deals like NAFTA and others that sent and when Joe Biden had sent China into the WTO, that led to black jobs being lost through all these manufacturing jobs in these big cities. And so all of the president's policies had a direct, tangible impact. And then there's the last point. The president had a specific plan for the next 4 years. Again, he said, these are the things I want to do for black economic empowerment. And it was a holistic plan that was called the Platinum Plan. So when you offer people and give people a reason to vote for you, give them a reason to consider what you're saying, I think they will return the favor by giving you the support. And that's exactly what happened.
So you look at places like Detroit and Flint and Michigan that are historically black, Democrat voting areas. Joe Biden got 95% of the vote there. Now, setting aside, the allegations about fraud and all of that, which I think are extremely legitimate and they need to be investigated more than what they're currently being investigated. But what can Republicans do to break through in areas like that and get 10%, 15, 20%? What else can Republicans do?
Be consistent. And that's just it. You cannot look at elections through the lens of a short-term gain. So you have to say, okay, this was the benchmark in 2016. This was the benchmark in 2020. Let's talk. And you say, how can we get 10, 14%? Not 10, 14% next election, but in 20 years. And I think what will happen, and when you have the long-term vision for it, that means you'll have every seat every time there's a special election. Every time you will continue the engagement, and I bet you it'll happen well before 20 years, because just look at what happened. President Trump's numbers from the last time we had a Republican nominee. Just look at what he was able to do in 4. It's because it was a consistency. It was showing up, being engaged at a national level and at a local level. It was because it was a priority. And so I think that's what our biggest challenge is going to be making sure everyone across the entire apparatus continues the engagement, because that's how you win. It's consistency.
It seems to me that anytime President Trump would make a statement or he would have some success, the Democrats it's like their go-to response is that he's a racist. And Joe Biden he constantly brought up Charlottesville, and which was a total lie, but that's what they constantly do. What is the intent behind that? And is there a way to get beyond this racism debate? And I wouldn't even call it a debate, but that accusation, how do Republicans get beyond that?
We have to be unafraid to fight back. One of the things that President Trump has taught the Republican Party is how to fight back. You cannot be passive. They call you a racist. That's why I start calling Joe Biden a bigot, because he is one. And you say, well, how do you know that? Because look at what he says. Look at what he does. It's very clear. So we've got to, and it's not just with words, it's with actual specifics. And so we have to call him out, be willing to fight the fight, and be willing to go to the different communities, go to different events, go to different platforms. If they invite you, go, because we have the authority, we have the policies. They actually are on our side. And your point that you raised about the racism claims from the left is a very good one, because it's on purpose. It's because nobody wants to be associated with a racist. Nobody really likes to be, I'm not going to vote for racist. I don't want to have a racist in my home. And so what they do is label Republicans racist, because it's the easiest thing to do. It's a emotional connection. It's emotional reaction that they're trying to get from not just black people, but from non-black voters who don't want to be associated with racists either. Your suburban moms, your working class and the educated people, they don't want to be associated with racists, and so you just label them a racist. Well, what proof? What doesn't matter? And this is what happens when you say it. Again, going back to consistency, when you say it over and over again, when you have it on loop on all of the channels, and we've heard from those tapes at CNN, they were undoubtedly, having an agenda and a narrative, a false narrative. So for 4 years, 5 years, if we're really honest, you have a consistent narrative, false narrative. Trump's a racist, and then people start to believe it. And so, but then if the Republicans don't fight back and aren't willing to go to these different places to counter it, we lose. That's why we have to be consistent. That's why we have to go on attack. And here's a funny story that just happened within the past 24 hours. National civil rights organizations, the legacy ones, NAACP, Urban League, they're all complaining. They're upset. You know why? Joe Biden seems to be ignoring them already. He's already ignoring them.
Right.
So to your point, they get 90-some% in all these different states and counties and cities, and they're mad because Joe Biden has yet to meet with the NAACP. All the work they did, all the stuff they were doing, all the money they spent in GOTV efforts, for what? Joe Biden is ignoring them. Kamala Harris is ignoring them. When they said all the cabinet picks, they would have been they're not even consulting them. Guess what? That's what they do. They take you for granted and ignore you, and you don't have a seat at the table. And so that's what we have to be: stay consistent and stay present, and because we have superior policies. We have policies that are of empowerment.
So talk a little bit about some of the new Republicans, the black Republicans that have been elected. Byron Donalds in Florida, Burgess Owens, who I think he just has an amazing story. He told that at the convention this summer, from Utah. Talk about some of those Republicans and the role that you think that they'll play in the caucus, in the party, and helping to set the agenda.
Well, it's really important to have not only diversity of thought, but diversity of geography. I love the fact that Burgess Owens is a Black American Republican from Utah. So there are some things that are important to Utah, issues that are important to people in Utah that he's going to be able to raise. Byron Donaldson down in Florida, southern Florida. That's important to have highlighted. And when you look at the things that some of the other down ballot Republican races that we were able to win in the black community, especially North Carolina, Wisconsin, and other places like that, these are important because COVID-19 has highlighted the importance, not just the federal elected officials, but the local elected officials. So I'm almost even more excited about the local electeds that we're able to win. But this is what they're going to have on a national level. They're going to be a part of the conversation. They're going to be able to get booked on TV shows, speaking events, and they're going to be able to have the platform. And that's what you want. You want to be able to have the platform to talk about the things that you care about, represent your community, and to be present. And that's going to help, because right now we've just had Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina in the Senate. Now we have 2 in the Congress. But, it expands just past that. Look at the diversity of women that were elected to the Republican from the Republican Party to Congress. And we've had, women of color too. And what we're doing in California, I mean, it's unprecedented. The number of seats that we flipped, and Mike Garcia won his election again, his reelection, a first-generation Mexican-American veteran, and we have 2 women who were first-time Republican women that were from South Korea in Congress. I mean, and Republican, we are changing the face of the party by having diverse faces, but the same conservative values, same Republican principles that unites us all. And that's something that we should all be really excited about.
I agree. Paris Dennard, Senior Communications Advisor for Black Media Affairs at the RNC. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
This is the Kyle Olson Show. We'll be right back.